on here. I did go visit Tommy today. He had another dialysis treatment. They pulled off some more fluid. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. Your dad said it was roughly about 6 liters that they got off in the 2 that they done. He's got about 6 liters of fluid off of him. He will have another one tomorrow. See how everything goes. Diana said before I left that there may be a chance tomorrow afternoon that he gets to come home. Don't know that. Just pray that everything that they're doing continues to help him get better. My stepdad, Randy Bruce, is also in there. He will have heart surgery Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning. Right now, I know they're going to put 3, I guess he'll have a triple bypass. I'm not sure with it. And then there's other issues, but they've got to do that first. Outside of that, I don't have any new sick. Is there anyone else that anyone knows about? Correct. And the last update I got on that is she was doing good from it? Okay, great. I know I talked to her Sunday and she was wanting to go ahead and get it done, get it over with. But let's keep her and Tommy and the rest of the sick in our prayers.
What about Kathy? They're not, they didn't get out tonight.
Is she doing better?
I haven't really talked to them, so.
Okay. They stayed in tonight. Anyone else that I'm forgetting? I'll announce that one in the end. That way we can look at all of it. Anything? Okay.
All right. Well, with the sick in mind, let's have a prayer real quick. Heavenly Father, thank you for today, and thank you for every blessing that you give us. Thank you for this congregation here at Walnut Grove. Please continue to bless us in our efforts to teach your word, and to strengthen our faith here in our family. And please be with those of our family that are sick and in the hospitals and undergoing tests and surgeries. Please be with Tommy, and please be with Diana in this tough time, and please help him to get to come home tomorrow if everything goes well, and help him to learn how to deal with the dialysis and the different things that he's dealing with. And please be with us and help us to do anything that we can to help those that are struggling. And please be with us tonight as we look to 1 Peter. And please be with us as we study your good book, and be with the young people here at Walnut Grove as they study these same chapters for Lads to Leaders. Please help them all to work hard and to be successful at convention and all the different things that they do for Lads to Leaders. And thank you so much for that program and the things that it does for our young people and the goals that it gives them to set and to achieve. And thank you so much for Jesus, and thank you for him coming to this earth and establishing the church. And thank you for his death on the cross for our forgiveness, and help us to never forget our forgiveness comes from his sacrifice. Help us to be willing to teach others about that forgiveness and how we can all have a home with you in heaven if we will obey your will. Be with us throughout the rest of this night, and keep us safe and keep us healthy. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, tonight we are in 1 Peter chapter 5. Before we get started, I need to clear something up. A few weeks ago, Darren asked me if I picked chapter 5 because it was short. I said no, I didn't. I didn't even realize it was short. When I went to the board to see what chapters were available, most of the chapters were available. So I thought, okay, well, I'll turn my Bible to 1 Peter, and I'll flip it open, and whatever chapter it opens to, that's the one I'll teach. Well, flipped it open to chapter 3. First verse is, wives, likewise be submissive to your husbands. I said, nope. Not doing that one. But Jeff got that one. So after that, I decided I'm going to look at the chapters, and I'm going to pick what I want to cover. So that gets us to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is about elders, about shepherding the flock. So let's get started here. Let's just read the first 4 verses, and we'll see what we can get from this. So 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. And depending on your translation, it's going to start out a little bit differently. The ESV, the New American Standard, and the New King James are all a little bit different. I study both out of New King James and the ESV, and those are different. So one thing that is different is the ESV starts out, so I exhort the elders. But then the New King James starts out, the elders who are among you, I exhort. I who am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God, which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. So depending on your translation, chapter 5 starts out either with so or therefore, or it leaves it out. But in the original Greek, that word is there. It's a 3-letter word, O-U-N. And that word is a connector. It means that we're connecting to something. So if chapter 5 starts with a connector, what are we connecting it to? Chapter 4. Okay? So or therefore is how chapter 5 starts out. So, what is this previous thought that was carried forward from chapter 4? Murray went over it a couple weeks ago. Look in verse 19 of chapter 4. What's he talking about there? Okay? Suffering. He's talking about suffering for the will of God. That thought of suffering is continued on into chapter 5 with so to the elders. Now, why would he mention elders and suffering? Elders don't suffer, do they? How many in here have seen firsthand an elder suffer for the will of God?
They deal with us.
Exactly. How many have family members that are elders and you've seen some of the hard things that they've had to deal with as elders? How many of you are married to or have been married to an elder and seen things that elders suffer through as they make hard decisions? Of course. How many of you have been elders in the past and will never forget the things that you endured as an elder? I feel like Mandy and I have a little bit of a unique situation in the fact that my dad is an elder, her dad is an elder, my uncle is an elder, her uncle is an elder. And we have definitely seen firsthand what elders go through for the sake of the church. I'm 47 years old. I've seen my dad cry once. That's when he was serving as an elder. Being an elder is not for everyone. And that's why we see the requirements for men who want to become elders. 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1 are very specific about who is able to become an elder. And here in chapter 5, Peter is giving elders some instruction and encouragement to push through as overseers. And I realize preachers have a very tough job. There are things that they endure during their careers as a full-time or even part-time minister that are tough. But elders suffer more than any member of the church there is. A big part of that is because of the responsibility the eldership carries. Someone read Hebrews 13:17. Hebrews 13:17. Okay, the elders of the church will give an account of their flock. They are to watch over the souls of each member. That is an enormous responsibility. Those of us who are not elders, whose soul are we responsible for? Our own. You know, I have 5 kids. I'm responsible for teaching them, for training them, responsible for preparing them to go out into the world on their own. I'm responsible for giving them every opportunity to establish their own faith and grow in their faith. But when it comes down to it, I'm not going to give an account of my kids' souls. Being an elder carries responsibility that is not found anywhere else. And now let's look here in chapter 5 at how Peter addresses the elders. But let's go back and let's connect verse 19 of chapter 4. So we're going to start in verse 19. It says, "Therefore let those who suffer according to the will of God commit their souls to him in doing good as to a faithful Creator. So to the elders who are among you, I exhort." Okay, what does it mean to exhort? Okay. Build up, encourage, build up. What else? There's a little bit more to this word here that's used for exhort than just encourage. It goes a little bit deeper. This word here literally means to call aloud from beside. To call aloud from beside. Now, David, if you're sitting there and I'm in the back corner of the auditorium over here and I say, "You got this, David. You can do this. I believe in you." That's encouragement, right? Yep. Okay, well, what's different if I'm standing right beside you and I've got my arm around you and I'm saying, "Come on, David, we got this. We're going to make it." I might squeeze a little bit. But that's a big difference. Yes. In just offering encouragement and doing what Peter is doing here. He is calling aloud from beside. You know, Peter is exhorting the elders.
Also shows you're with, you're close.
Yes. Right. You are right beside them. You're doing it with them. You're not just separate from them, giving them some advice. He's encouraging them from their side. Can you imagine having the Apostle Peter be your mentor as an elder? Now, let's think about this for a second. What time frame are we dealing with here? AD what? '62, '64, somewhere in that range. When was the church established? AD 33. So how many years has the term elder or the position elder existed? About 30 years. This is brand new. You know, there's been 30 years since the church was established. Elders as church leaders were not a thought in anyone's mind on this earth 30 years before this, because the church didn't exist. All of this is brand new. They didn't have generations of elders to watch operate. They didn't have previous elderships to sit with and to see what to expect when they became elders. They were trailblazing. Jesus brought a brand new covenant. And with that brand new way to worship and a brand new format for leadership. And everything wasn't sunshine and rainbows in the early church, was it? No, not at all. Was Jesus' ministry a walk in the park? No, good grief, no. Was spreading the gospel and establishing congregations easy for the apostles and the disciples? No. And we see all through the book of Acts how much suffering was endured by Christians. And here Peter is telling the elders, keep doing what you're doing. I'm right here with you. And he goes on to say, I who am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ. You know, how was Peter able to truly exhort, to call aloud from beside? Yes, he was an elder himself. He was going through it with them. He knew exactly what they were going through. Okay, and then what else does it mention here? He's a fellow elder and what? A witness of what? The sufferings of Christ. He was an elder and he was a witness to the sufferings of Christ. And Murray had mentioned this. Go ahead.
Well, I'm talking to young men who hadn't had much, if any, experience in the gospel.
Yeah.
And, you know, I often wonder how in 70, I used to be raised, whole Bible is about starting, coming to the cross. But they were taught all these other things, and sacrificing and circumcision, and that's all they knew.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, here comes a guy and says, hey, do a little different.
We'll do a lot different.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and then they have
Yeah.
to go along and then think of the opposition they face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they faced opposition everywhere they turned. But, you know, Murray had mentioned in an earlier chapter how close Peter and Christ were. And they had been through a lot together. You know, Peter is mentioned approximately 155 times in the New Testament. So 155 times in the New Testament, we see Peter. Anyone want to guess how many of those are direct interactions with Jesus? Got 155 total. How many are mentioned with him directly being with Jesus? Almost. 125. So 80% of the time we see Peter mentioned in the New Testament, he's with Christ. We see Peter with Christ so many times. We see him when he was called. 3 different books of the gospel mention it. During the miracles, Matthew chapter 14, when he walks on the water. His confession, transfiguration, Gethsemane, and his denial. All 4 books of the gospel cover his denial. How'd you like to have that scattered throughout the Bible? So Peter knew the sufferings of Christ. Peter had spent a lot of time with Christ. He goes on to say, he was also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. What is that glory? Heaven. And notice how he doesn't say he hopes to be a partaker. He says, I am a fellow elder. I am a witness to the sufferings of Christ, and I am a partaker of the glory that was coming. And Peter was very confident, which really throughout Peter's life, he was pretty well known for being confident, wasn't he? He was a lot of times overconfident. And that's one of the things I love about Peter, is you get to see how real he was, how human he was. Even though, look at all the times and how much time he spent with Christ, everything he witnessed with Christ, he was still human and he still messed up. Anybody got any comments before we keep going? I'm kind of trudging on. Okay. Well, now he sets in with some direct exhortations for the elders. Look at verse 2. He says to shepherd the flock which is among you. And I do want to spend some time on this. And there's a reason Peter uses the phrase shepherd the flock. Really, there's many reasons. But one, this was very relatable at this time. You know, I wanted to do some research. You know, we see this thought throughout the Bible quite often about shepherds, and sheep, and shepherding. And so I wanted to research sheep. I realized I don't really know much about sheep. You know, we're learning about shepherding. Well, shepherds, you know, they shepherd sheep. So what are the characteristics of these sheep or these people that the shepherds are responsible for? And I researched, you know, how important sheep were in the first century. And the very first point that it brings up is sheep were a backbone of daily life. You know, for us in America, sheep aren't a big thing here. You know, cattle, maybe. Seems like everywhere you turn, you see a cattle farm. But for us, sheep are just not that common. But in this area, in this time, sheep were the backbone of daily life. They provided multiple essentials. You know, they had wool, milk, they used their meat, their skins. He mentions they were especially common in Israel and the surrounding areas. Many families owned small flocks. Usually that was 10 to 50 sheep. You know, wealthier landowners, you know, they would have hundreds or even thousands of sheep. So shepherding was recognized as a very common occupation. So using these terms was extremely relatable to the people in this time. Also, sheep are central to religion and worship. You know, sheep were indispensable to Jewish religious practice. Think about it. The daily sacrifices in the temple, Passover lamb, sin offerings, guilt offerings, peace offerings. Josephus recorded that tens of thousands of lambs could be slaughtered in Jerusalem during Passover. You can imagine all of the people coming and offering sacrifice, tens of thousands of sheep. Okay, if you're going to give up one sheep, how many sheep does it require to produce one sheep? 2. So if you're giving up tens of thousands, think about the ownership involved and the numbers of sheep in the first century. I can imagine sheep being everywhere. Everywhere you turn, you're going to see sheep. So shepherding was something that these men could easily relate to. But on top of being relatable, the shepherding model applies perfectly to the role of an elder. I wanted to do, research on not just sheep in the first century, but I wanted to see what are the characteristics of sheep in general. And some of these, when you step back and you when you hear me read these and you think about these, it's a little odd how well they relate to us. You know, sometimes it kind of puts us to shame in some of these, but you can think about times in our life where we have done things or said things or been in positions where, like, wow, I really am a sheep. One of the first ones, characteristic of sheep. Sheep lack natural defenses. They don't have claws. They don't have fangs. They don't have speed. They have poor ability to fight or escape predators. And they tend to panic rather than defend themselves. Any of us ever do things like that? We ever have trouble maybe defending ourselves in a certain tough situation? We ever panic instead of being able to get ourselves out of that situation? You know, without a shepherd, sheep are easy prey. Sheep have, now this one here, if there was anything that could describe me better, I don't know what it is. And Mandy, when I read this, Mandy may stand up and shout amen. Sheep have poor vision and limited awareness. That's me. Without my contacts, I'm blind as a bat. And my awareness, for whatever reason, is not that great. You know, Mandy goes all out for Christmas. We have, I don't know if I counted this year, but somewhere around 14 Christmas trees. And our biggest tree in the living room is 12 feet tall. I don't know what the diameter is at the base, but it's huge. The living room gets completely rearranged so that we can put the tree up. This year I did better. I think I made it maybe a day, 2 days before I realized the tree was up. I think it was last year I went an entire week. Walked past it no time. How many times had no clue that this enormous Christmas tree was in our living room? Very limited awareness. I am most definitely a sheep in that regard. Sheep don't see well at long distances. They have weak depth perception, and they often fail to notice danger until it's very close. You know, sheep rely on a shepherd to see threats before they do. Think about that in the relationship of a sheep and a shepherd in the eldership. Okay? Sheep are prone to wandering. Sheep will graze with their heads down, drift slowly but steadily away from safety, and rarely realize they are lost until they're in danger. We ever do things like that? I know I do. They need a shepherd to guide and to call them back and to pursue them. Fourth thing about sheep is sheep cannot find their way home. You know, Darren and I have cattle, and right now I have a calf that for some reason the electric fence doesn't faze him, and he will get out every single day. He'll go to Murray and Sheriff's. There's times he'll go across the road to Bud and Tabby's. But the thing with the cow, every day he comes back. He knows where home is. He knows where mama is. He knows where his buddies are. He knows where the feed is. And always comes back. Sheep are not that way. Sheep have a poor sense of direction. Sheep do not naturally retrace their steps. And sheep become more lost the longer they wander. Sound like people? A lost sheep is almost certainly a dead sheep without intervention. All right, sheep will overgraze and ruin their pasture. Left alone, sheep will graze plants down to the root. They will return to the same spots repeatedly, and they'll destroy their own food source. They need a shepherd to move them intentionally. Sixth thing about sheep is sheep depend on the shepherd for water. Sheep are afraid of fast-moving water. They won't drink from unsafe or turbulent sources, and they can even die from dehydration near water because they refuse to approach it. they require a shepherd to lead them to still waters. We see that in Psalms 23. Sheep are highly vulnerable when injured or cast down. Sound like us? A sheep that is injured gets wool heavy, rolls onto its back, and often cannot recover on its own. Without a shepherd, it will die from exposure or predators. Number 8, sheep need continual care and correction. Sheep require regular inspection, cleaning of wounds, protection from parasites, and occasional discipline. Number 9, sheep respond to voice, not force. And we're going to see this in the upcoming verses in chapter 5. Sheep learn the shepherd's voice. They follow trust, not coercion. And sheep panic under harsh handling. And we see in John chapter 10, Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." You know, good shepherding is relational. It's not authoritarian. And this is exactly what Peter is getting into in the next few verses. We as people are highly dependent on leaders guiding us as Christians. Sheep and shepherding is the perfect way to explain the elder-member relationship. We see the needs of the sheep. So what's involved in being a shepherd? Peter says to shepherd. He uses that as a verb. So that requires action. So what are these actions of an elder? What are these actions of a shepherd? What is a physical shepherd? Let's look at some of the things that they did with sheep. Guiding and leading. You know, a shepherd led the sheep to pasture, food. They would lead the sheep to water. Protection. And this one here, I'd never thought a lot about it this way, but I listened to a podcast that Josh Ketchum does. I would encourage anybody to listen to that. It's Freed Hardman's podcast. It's the Excellence in Leadership podcast. He deals with everything related to church leadership, whether it's teaching a Bible class or the eldership or preaching. He covers all kinds of topics. It's a great podcast. He even, gets real specific with certain things. One, he had Jerry Barber, and he was interviewing him on how to handle retirement as a preacher. And went into all the details of how to prepare for retirement, what to do, how you feel after you retire. Great podcast. Well, one of the podcasts on there was about shepherding, and he had Jeremy Weekly. He preaches at the West End congregation in Knoxville. And Jeremy recently received his doctorate, and he did his dissertation on the shepherding model of elderships. And one of the things he mentioned when he was interviewing so many congregations of different people for that dissertation is that he found that a lot of people thought that shepherding, they didn't like the shepherding model because they said it sounded weak. And he laughed in that podcast and mentioned, he said, shepherding is not sitting around holding a sheep and cuddling it. That's not shepherding. When you think back to shepherds in the Bible, what do you think of when it comes to protection? What do you think of when you think of David? Little shepherd boy. What did David do? Yeah, he killed a lion with his bare hand. How is that weak? How could you see that as weak? How many men in here have killed a lion with their bare hand? Well, there's a good reason. It takes a special person to be a shepherd. Shepherds defend the flock from predators, wolves, lions, bears, thieves. They were often carrying a rod or a weapon, and they were willing to risk their own life. There is nothing weak about shepherding. The shepherd would stand between danger and the sheep. Also, shepherds will care for the weak and the injured. Shepherds they would physically pick up and carry injured sheep. They sought out those that wandered off. They gave special attention to the sick or the young. You know, it's so easy to see this in an eldership. You know, Ezekiel 34, I think Murray even mentioned this a little bit last week or during chapter 4. This shows exactly what shepherds are not to do. It shows how they fail in all of these things. We see that shepherds, they know their sheep personally. That was another thing Jeremy mentioned in that podcast. He mentioned that shepherds smelled like the sheep. It was impossible for a good shepherd not to smell like the sheep. Shepherds knew individual sheep. They knew their tendencies and their weaknesses, their needs. And Jesus mentions this, in John 10. He says, I know my own, and my own know me. Shepherds offer correction and discipline. They had a rod. They had a staff. The rod was for protection and correction. The staff was for guidance and rescue and direction. Discipline wasn't punishment. It was done in a loving way. It was loving guidance to keep the sheep safe. We see shepherds have to have constant vigilance. Shepherds worked long hours. They slept lightly or they stayed awake at night. They endured heat, cold, and isolation. It was a role of endurance and faithfulness, not comfort. And I don't know of too many men that decide to become shepherds in the church for a reason of comfort. The last thing here about an actual shepherd is accountability. A shepherd was responsible for every sheep. And I want to remind you, this is a secular view of a shepherd. These were not roles that were pulled from Bible references in relations to elders. This is strictly what shepherds were. So when Peter brings up shepherding, he has used this perfectly. You know, a shepherd was responsible for every sheep. Losses had to be explained. They had to explain to the owner where this one was. They lost 2 sheep out of 1,000. Still had to be explained. You know, neglect had consequences. So we see the weight that this reference to shepherds has, don't we? This isn't just using a common term of that day or the culture. This was very direct and purposeful explanation of the nature of an elder. Now let's look at what Peter instructs the elders to do. It says, serving as overseers or taking the oversight. That is to look diligently. And this isn't just after Sunday service looking at the board to see what the number was. This is diligently looking after the flock, knowing where the sheep are, knowing what's going on in their lives, taking ownership of the flock and making decisions in their best interest. And Peter mentions here how to oversee. How does he say to oversee here? He gives us a not to and also a to do. Verse 2. Not by what? Compulsion. But how? Willingly. Now, how many times in our lives do we do things because we feel like we should? Or because we know it's the right thing to do, even though we really don't want to? You know, I'm going to be honest here and confess something, but last Sunday, Mandy brought up us going with the Fords to visit some ramp recipients. And it was our first Sunday with the new schedule. I'm going to be honest. I was kind of curious to see what it would feel like to be home at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. We live so far away, our Sundays for years have been long. We might, best case, get home around 4 o'clock. Well, it was the Sunday for Stilly House. So we had that at 1:15, and then we were going to go visit. I just wasn't looking forward to that. That started out by compulsion. Going to make the visits, going to the Stilly House. It started with compulsion. Ended up, we had a great day. I mean, we had a blast. Had a great day, had a record crowd that I know of at the Stilly House. And then made great visits, went to see Tommy at the hospital, had a good meal. I mean, it doesn't get much better. But that's compulsion. That's doing something by compulsion. And that is the exact opposite of what elders should be doing. They're supposed to be doing it willingly. Someone turn to 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. How does that start out? This is where we see qualifications for elders. That's it. If a man what? Desires the office. The qualifications that follow, they don't even apply if the man doesn't have a desire to be an elder or a shepherd. Now, there was one of the classes I was in at PTP this past year was on eldership, and this guy, I think, took it a little too far, but he was saying basically if elders or if men that wanted to be elders wanted it this way, had this scriptural desire, a congregation would never have to ask for men to be put forward to be elders, because they would be going to the current eldership, or those men would be going to the congregation saying, I want to be an elder. And he was saying a lot of times the process is a little backwards. How we look for men with qualifications and then see if they want to be. He's saying you should want to be an elder and then make sure you meet the qualifications. So I see his point. It does, it makes sense. But he went on, he took it a little too far on that. But it's extremely important for that desire to be there. It has to be willingly. Verse 2 continues on with not for dishonest gain. Some translations may say filthy lucre or sordid gain. I don't think I've ever used the phrase in my everyday life, filthy lucre or sordid gain. But what does that mean? What does this whole phrase mean here?
King James says dishonest gain.
Okay. For dishonest gain, shameful. What's that? Okay. What was that? No. This is the concept of greed, being greedy. Yeah, this is not something you're doing for yourself. So this is obviously an issue that Peter needed to bring up. How in the world could an elder, or would an elder, someone wanting to be an elder, be greedy? It took me a minute. I really was stumped on this, just because, all we know, or all I know, are the elders that I've grown up around. My dad, father-in-law, uncles, Ed, Hugh, Jack. You can't imagine any of them wanting to use greed in some way in the eldership. So how would an elder be greedy? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, it could just be something as simple as that. They're not even to the point of being a good person. They're willing to do something dishonest or illegal for actual gain. But then, yeah, pride. Pride gets in the way a lot of times, doesn't it? Pride can get you into positions. Why? I can't answer that one. It could stem back from what that one guy was saying on how they became an elder. You know, if they didn't have that desire to begin with, they might have felt compelled by other elders going to them. There may have been a real need in the congregation for more men to serve as elders, and they weren't purposely taking that position in a wrong way, but they may not have desired it enough to where through the years they're really going to struggle with that position. It's insane. I mean, you go to bed at night with the weight of the congregation's souls. That's tough. And you're supposed to desire that just to be able to be qualified. It's something. So that's why for me it was hard to think, how could anybody be greedy in the position of an elder? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We saw that with the Pharisees and different things that they went through. They let it get to their head, and that's like more that pride. It can get to a man's head. But even, when you go back to Ezekiel 34, what were they doing? It specifically mentions something, that they were feeding themselves instead of the sheep. I'd never really thought about that, but as an elder, you can spend all your time feeding yourself and neglecting the sheep. I mean, even, like say, you use your position as an elder to go to certain retreats or conferences or take college courses, maybe even using the church's finances to support those things. You're learning more, doing things for yourself, but the whole time you're not transferring into that. You're not using any of that for the sheep. What about teaching false things in order to get a following? Ends up going back to pride. You want people to agree with you. You want people to surround you and build you up. And kind of what Kim said, you're willing to do something wrong or questionable for financial gain. I'm not exactly sure how that would happen in eldership unless you were just stealing money, taking money, or even in your own position, in your work, or if you're a business owner or different things, you're cutting back on your income to save on taxes or doing different things, whatever it is. There are ways an elder could be caught up in greed. And the kid's already out. Okay, well, I'm going to stop there because we're getting into another word here that I want to explain and spend some time on. So we got to what? Part of verse 2. Didn't even get finished with verse 2. Whew. I'm going to have to do something different next week. All right. We're going to get through this next week.
At least you'll be teaching all Wednesday nights.
I'm supposed to be up there. You may be covered for me. Man, I really thought I was going to get through verse 4 at least.
If you would, take a hymn book and turn to number 781, Wonderful Story of Love. Number 781. Wonderful story of love, tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love, wake the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it, shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, I want to believe it. Wonderful story of love. Invitation song will be number 103. Come to Jesus, number 103.
Tonight's scripture reading comes from Matthew 6:14 through 15. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses.
The title for our devotional tonight is A Forgiving Spirit. Of all the characteristics God has given us, none is more blessed than the gift of a forgiving spirit. It is easy to forgive the person who comes to us and humbles himself before us. Being sorry for his wrong and begging for our forgiveness, we feel good and generous with the power to forgive. We enjoy that role. When we have been betrayed or falsely accused and the whole world knows and no one comes to ask our forgiveness, we sometimes choose to remain hurt by the wrong deed done to us. This is when we need to forgive the one responsible. Holding that hurt and anger in our hearts will affect us day and night. It will force us to center ourselves not on Christ or those who need us. Christ, the innocent, died for us, the guilty. Christ forgave those who did not care. Can we be Christ-like if we don't forgive or ask forgiveness? As I was studying, the first example that I could really think of was Joseph. Joseph, he